and we've got what, how many do we have? 14, 20? Whatever. So I'm Deb Squire. I'm born and raised in Salina. And George and Lois are my parents, and my dad taught me the love of travel. And I saw half of it in the back seat of the car, turned backwards. But everybody in the car, the station wagon with 5 kids and mom and dad, would fall asleep except my dad and I. And it was before seatbelts. Huh?
You can't get away.
Well, I suppose that's what I was doing, but I was just having a good time with one-on-one with my dad, because with 5 kids, you didn't get time alone with your parents, right? So I'm hanging over the seat like this, and I'll never forget, he would say to me, "Hey, Debbie K, where do you suppose that road goes?" And I'd look down that road, and even today, it gives me goosebumps. And I'd say, "I don't know." He said, "Everybody's asleep. Why don't we see where that road goes?" And down we go. I mean, we ended up on logging roads. We could not turn around. We had to back out. Now, with the camper on the back, that's kind of tough. So anyways, we got into some adventures, my dad and I, while the others were kind of sleeping in the car.
You didn't tell them.
What's that?
You didn't tell the rest of the family.
They usually woke up in the midst of whatever dilemma we were in, you know. And he had a rule. You didn't ever go to the bathroom.
Oh my goodness.
So we would be in the car. So then he'd stop along the side of the road finally, and he'd get all aggravated because he was ready to go where he was going. So we would learn to go to the bathroom before we got in the car, and we had a bucket in the car, an ice cream bucket. Y'all know what that's for, right? Yeah, you pee in a bucket because it had a lid. Yeah, because we wouldn't dare stop, you know? So anyways, let's fast forward to when I was an adult. And in 2007, I found myself in a situation that I'd never been in. I had no responsibilities. I retired. I wasn't married. I had no kids. I didn't have a house or a cat or a dog. I had no responsibilities. Ever have that happen until you retired, or even later? And I'm still 55. 55 years old. And so my daughter and my son said, "Mom, you always wanted to be a ranger in a state park. You always wanted to do that. Why don't you go do that?" Oh, well, okay, that's a great idea, but I didn't do it. I dragged my feet and I hung around, and then one night, my daughter rented a movie. Have you ever heard of The Bucket List? Morgan Freeman? Who's the other guy? I forget this. Anyways, The Bucket List is about the things you should do before you kick the bucket. And I watched the movie, and the next morning I loaded up my Oldsmobile with my cookware. Only this isn't it. I had one cast iron skillet. And the cup. And where's my peg? And my tent. I have a tent peg up here somewhere. And the things I needed for hiking. And I had my GPS, which I didn't know how to use, and my ever-ready atlas. And I headed west. I had no idea where I was going, had no idea what I was going to do. I just got in the car and headed west, and figured if I got to a great big pond that didn't have another side, I'd gone too far. So in the back of my mind, I had thought, I want to go to the national parks, and I found out that they would hire me as a ranger. Now, a certain kind of ranger, but because I was a school teacher for 34 years, 32 and a half, I already vetted. They would hire me because I've already proven I'm not a, bad guy. So and what for? I thought, well, you could be trail guides, you could be teachers, you could help build the trails, all kinds of things that you could I thought, well, I'll apply for that job, but it was government, so all these forms. And you know what? I didn't want anything that said responsibility. So I ended up not getting all the forms filled out, but I ended up remembering we had been to so many of the state parks when I was growing up, national parks. Yellowstone, Petrified Forest, Disney World. Oh, that's not a national park, is it? But we've been to so many, but I couldn't remember in my mind what Glacier National Park looked like. I couldn't remember. But I knew we had been there, but I couldn't remember it. So I think in the back of my mind, I was headed towards Montana, which is where Glacier National Park is. I was telling somebody earlier, you don't end up by accident in Montana. You gotta plan on going there and Glacier National Park because you gotta go west and then you gotta go north in order to go. You have to. So anyways, I ended up in Glacier National Park with my car and my backpack and my stuff, and I went out and I started looking for a job. And I had this fun rule. I was only allowed to spend the money that I made. I paid for gas money out, but after that, I could only spend any money that I made, otherwise I had to go home. That was a rule I gave. So I went out and got a job, and I was a sous cook, sous chef. That means I cut up stuff in a restaurant. I helped. It means I worked in the kitchen back in the back and chopped up vegetables, and worked with a cook at a resort called Glacier Highlands. And I got a job within the first 4 or 5 days. But what I did was I had no place to live, right? So I had a pup tent. You all know what a pup tent is? Just like this? Yeah? So I went to a place in Whitefish. It was Whitefish State Park. And I pitched my tent and paid to stay there and had my showers there in the campground. And I would go to work until late, close the restaurant down, drive back to my pup tent, and get in there, crawl in there, and just fall asleep. But one night, one night I had a hard time getting home because it was raining so hard, and the wind was blowing so hard, and I didn't know that the wind got to be 115 miles an hour coming off the mountain. Yeah, that's pretty fast. So, what I got back to my tent tired as I could be, and do you know what happened when I got there? The tent was there because it was driven into the ground. A branch had broken off of the tree in the wind and stuck itself like a stake right through the tent into the ground. I looked at that tent and I said, it's time for this grandma to get a cabin. And so the next day, I slept in the car that night, but I started looking for a cabin and I found one. I found my dream cabin in the woods, in the forest, where I could watch the moose eat the apples off of the orchard tree, left over from last year, and I could see the deer, and there were all kinds of animals. And I did a screened-in porch on it, because out there the mosquitoes are the size of hummingbirds. Yeah, they call it the state bird. Yeah. So anyways, what I'm here to do is to share with you some of the adventures that I've had, because I've gone back almost every summer. The first 2 summers, I stayed there 4 and 5 months and worked and lived in Montana in my cabin and worked, and every minute I wasn't working, I was doing this. I had my camera, and what I did was, I don't know if you've ever seen, I'm just show you real quick. This is a backpack. It's different probably from what you guys know as a backpack. Maybe you didn't have one. Guess what it has in it? It's called a bladder. You fill it with water, put it on your back, it keeps you cool, and you put this thing in your mouth right here, and you drink out of it without touching anything. It hangs right here on your shoulder. Isn't that cool? It's called a camelback. So I have that. These are the essentials. My matches. You know why I have these? Anybody know what these are for? You wear these because you don't want to startle an animal. You don't want to startle a moose. You don't want to startle a bear. You don't want to scare them, because that's when they get upset. So if you're walking with this, it makes noise. So that's what they are. They're bear bells. But the locals, the people that live there, they call them dinner bells. So you're announcing to the bears you're coming, so they know dinner's on its way. Speaking of that, I was alone, so hiking alone is not a real good idea, but when you're alone, so I learned to either wait at the end of the trail, at the beginning of the trailhead, until another group went, and then I'd follow behind them, or if I saw a big one coming, I'd go ahead of them. So that I was with a group, but not with a group. Then I made friends and we hiked together. But we were doing the hiking. So, this is what I looked like when I was hiking. Well, that's if it was warm. It was cold outside. I was a little classier.
Oh, no.
Now, a hat is a must because the sun is hot. And so hat is part of your vital equipment that you take. And I have varying different kinds. I want to tell you real quick before I go any further about one hat that I wear. And that's this. I'm a 2-time survivor of breast cancer. And that brings me to a point. Forgive me if I cry. There was someone who came to my house every week the first time I was diagnosed, and brought me candy and cards every single week. And that was Louise Fawcett. She spent, and I fell in love with her, and she's just been such an inspiration to me. And probably 5 times today she said, "What can I do to help?" So Louise, today is dedicated to you.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Because I survived cancer twice, so that I could be here today to share these pictures with you. Okay? All right? So, real quick, a couple other things. This is a fun story, and then I'll get to the pictures. Everybody knows what these are. You know what those are? These are Fritos. Fritos, right? Everybody knows what Fritos are? You know what Fritos are. Why would I have Fritos? Because they're a basic necessity when you're camping, or when you're hiking, camping. Something that you carry always with you. One, anybody want to guess why? You can eat them. Yep. They're corn, so they're fuel. But here's the deal. Between that and my matches, I can always start a fire. Fritos are corn and oil. And they will start a fire better than anything else. And they burn, and it burns. And when it's done, you can see all the grease down below. So, you just need to get a couple bags of them and, chomp down on a Friday night and eat them all. So these are something we always carry when we, there's my tent peg. So my tent went in the trunk of my car, and because I don't overnight camp in the mountains and hike, I just do day hiking. And the other thing that I always carried with me, of course, was, a compass. You always have your compass with you. And what I didn't bring today was I have some scarves that you put around your neck or your head when you're hot, but they're mats. The scarf itself and the neckerchief are mats. And many a time I'd be hiking, somebody'd be lost, we'd take off the scarf, and they would figure out where they were from my scarf. It was a little sweaty, but at that point, nobody really cares. So, let's start off with some pictures. I love the big pictures. I love them. I figure we can see them better, and they're closer to being real life. So let's start over here. Has anyone figured out where this is? This is home. This is Coldwater Creek.
Oh, that water pretty old.
And if you look closely, you can see the bridge back down there.
Oh, wow.
So this is Coldwater Creek. So my adventure started here in Salina, where I took off. All right? And on my way out west, I always stop in Minnesota. I have friends, Betty and Leroy Kluver. Any of you know them from here in town? And his parents live in Minnesota. And I started going out there in 2001. And then at 91. Anyways, I always stop in Minnesota. And I am always intrigued as I cross the plains where there's nothing but cows and telephone poles and cows and antelope and telephone poles over and over. The grasses change different colors. On some of the plains out in Kansas and out there, the grasses are more brown and red. But this is Minnesota. And this is what their grasslands look like. So this is me on my way out west, stopping at where I always stop in Clare City, Minnesota, to visit Betty or Leroy's parents, my friends from Minnesota. And then I ended up in Glacier National Park. Now I'm going to go to this picture so to give you some idea. After I went up, well, let me tell you about this one. You see this road?
I can't see.
I'll get it for you, don't worry. There's a road going down the middle of it. You can see the cars on it. See it
I
right
see
here?
that.
See the road? That's called Going to the Sun Road. Going to the Sun Road, but it's spelled going -to-the Sun Road. So my granddaughter, who I took out there twice, never says going to the Sun Road. It's a 42-mile road through the pass and through the mountain in Glacier National Park. She always says going -to-the Sun Road. Always. That's the only way she does it. Now I'm going to tell you, this is just after you get to Logan Pass, which is at the top of the road, the going to the Sun Road. But there's something special about this picture. It's a once-in-a-lifetime shot. You cannot take this picture again.
Oh, yeah.
Because you can see from the top of the mountain down to the water and the flowers along the bottom. And if you look carefully, are there leaves on that tree?
No.
No. Want to guess why?
Well, it's old.
Nope.
Oh, no.
Try to get fire.
Oh,
It was a
oh,
huge
fire.
forest fire, and it burned the forest. And because the trees, these are younger ones that seem to, the different ones that grow faster, but because all these trees were burned out, you could see clear the top of the mountain and everything in between. Now, if you look carefully, down here along the bottom are flowers.
Yeah.
And that's what happens after a forest fire. The low to the ground plants begin to grow. And there are some seeds to some trees, nuts and pods, that will only germinate and grow after the intensity of the heat of a forest fire. But the flowers on the forest floor are gorgeous. And I used to take a picture and worry I wanted to get back the next week to take a picture of a purple one. Guess what? Purple ones are gone, and now we have yellow. Actually, the yellow ones start first. So every week there would be another flower blooming, but these were really special because these were from the forest fire. And there's rapids. I don't know if you can see the waterfalls and things in here. And this is called Berrien Springs. And it's a beautiful hike down to a waterfall. Now, are you looking to see how tall those mountains are? Okay? So we got those tall mountains. Let's look at another tall mountain. This is called Mount Reynolds. And I've never seen it taken like this again. But if you notice, the fun part of this, what's the top and the bottom?
Straight up.
The top is lit up
No, no.
from the sun, and the bottom is in shadows because the sun was setting on the mountains. and only the top of the mountain is lit up from the sun as the sun sets. So this is Mount Reynolds, but the road runs right along here, and this mountain goes straight up.
I road.
Not, you can't see it on here.
Oh,
And on this side, it goes straight down. Oh, not to worry, there's a stone fence about this big. And you're in your car driving. And you can look straight down, maybe 3, 4, 5 football fields. Lots, way down into a valley. And here, you can only look out and see the flowers growing in the rocks because it goes straight up. And it was then that I remembered why I didn't remember Glacier National Park as a child. Want to guess why? I was down on the floorboards with my head tucked between my knees because I was scared to death. I thought for sure my dad was going to drive off the side of the mountain and they wouldn't find my remains till the next spring. And he was so ornery, he'd go, "Daddy Kate, why would that worry you?" So I remember, I don't remember a lot of Glacier National Park because I was hiding my eyes or hiding on the floorboards. Remember, there were no seatbelts back then. So, this is going to Sun Road. This is one of the most famous, this is one of the top 10 pictures that are usually taken in the United States, popular ones. This is called Avalanche Creek. And there's a trail that goes from Avalanche Creek to Avalanche Lake. It's a 3.7-mile hike that I take every chance that I get. We almost always see bear on it. I'll tell you some stories about that in a minute. And always there's some deer or some critters of some kind that you see along the way. But isn't that a beautiful waterfall? And it goes on and on and on. And that is attached to something called Trail of the Cedars, which are big, huge cedar trees that are all still virgin. It's a beautiful area, and it's all wooden sidewalks so that it's handicap accessible to get to this. So anybody can go see it. That doesn't work. Just one of the waterfalls along the area. This is early in the spring, well, it's probably summer, early summer, because the water's down, you can see some of the rocks. Early in the spring, there'll be chunks of ice and ice melt. And this is McDonald Creek. McDonald Creek, and it flows into Lake McDonald, which is a major, major lake in Glacier National Park. That's just one scene. Now, what do you notice about this picture? What's different about this one from the others? Anybody think? Well, there is snow on the mountain. Doesn't it look like I had a setting that made everything blue?
Yeah.
Ah, not so. I was taking pictures that day, and everything I took turned out blue, like this. The sky, the mountain, the water, except for this. This is burned out forest at the bottom where it's black. And I was like, what is going on? Is something wrong? Is my camera broken? And I stopped, and there was another tourist, somebody with a camera, and he laughed at me and he said, "Silly, smell the air."
Yeah.
So I smelled the air, and you know what it smelled like? It smelled like smoke. This is the smoke from the California wildfires, all the way up the coast and inland to Montana into the mountains. And the smoke made the pictures turn this shade of blue. Now it's beautiful, but you lose a lot of detail because everything is blue. All right. So, see what we have next. We'll put these away. I'm going to share these. There is a road. It's a stone road, and it's called the Road to Pole Bridge. And Pole Bridge is a town that's way up. Oh, I forgot to tell you about that one. Way up, far away from everybody else. It's like 4 miles from the Canadian border. It's way up there, way up. And the Road to Pole Bridge, you got some pretty hardy people that live there because in the winter it's cold, lots of snow. So I had a day off. I was looking forward to it because it was the whole day off. Whole day off. So I had my cameras ready. I had an iPad and my little tiny pocket camera and my big camera, my computer so I could download pictures. And guess what happened when I got up? It was raining. And I said, Lord, you knew I wanted to take pictures of your beautiful land today, and how can I take pictures when it's so rainy? Yeah, and overcast. But I decided, and after I had a good talk with him, didn't do me any good, I decided I was going anyways. And do you know what I found out that day? It doesn't matter if the sun is shining, if it's raining, if there's snow on the ground. The Lord has made a beautiful picture for us every day. Every day. And how would I have thought that this beautiful dark sky would make such a pretty picture? This is how they do fences in Montana. The ground is really rocky, so they take chicken wire, make it in a post or a circle, put some stakes in it, fill it up with rocks, and sometimes that's all they do. Other times, they'll put concrete or sackcrete down in it, and it seeps down in and turns it into posts. But what I've noticed is that fences across the country, someday I'm going to do fences, pictures, they're different, and they're made out of whatever is natural and native to the area where you are. And since Montana is so rocky, they make their fences out of rocks. But look at that sky. Isn't it beautiful? It was fierce. It was an angry sky. It really was. But it was over there, and it was beautiful. So, I started up a place called the North Fork. And I started taking pictures, and again, I thought there was something wrong with my camera. Because look at the color of the trees.
They're white.
They're white. Now wait a minute. There's no leaves on them. They're all stripped, right? All those trees are stripped. There's no leaves on them at all. And they're white. Can you see them? Except guess what, guys? They're not white. Look here on the edge. What color is that tree? Yeah? Is there black in there?
Like a little bit.
Yeah. And what happened was the sun came out, and there's something called the golden hour. When the sun goes down and it reflects back up, it glowed on these black trees and turned them white.
Oh, yeah.
And it's only because of the storm clouds and the time of day and everything. But these line a river, and it's forest fire. These are all black, burned out trees.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? Every time and this one I took just because the mountains are in the background. This is the backside of Glacier. So this is on the west side. And I took this just because it's the grasses. It's so peaceful. This is a for real homestead. This is a for real ranch. And there's usually deer in here. I have another picture where there's like 6 deer out there, just crazy. And this is the same day with the storm, and you can see where the clouds are beginning to break up from the mountains. But isn't that peaceful?
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
And what had happened if I'd have pouted and stayed home? I mean, I've done that once in a while. So, this is the first time I've shown these pictures, but I'm going to make a series of them and frame them, and I'm going to call them Beauty in the Time of Turmoil.
Wow.
Isn't that pretty? Because don't we go through some rough times in our life? And when you look at it and look back, isn't there something wonderful that usually happens from it? So there's always that silver lining of the terrible things and the hard things that happen to us in life. And that, to me, that speaks to me. Now, I haven't said this to you, but I had a lot of things that I was trying to figure out when I went out there. And what I found was I fell in love with the mountains. They're so big and majestic. They just go on, and there's never the end to the beauty. And what I found and what I believe today and what I go back for medicinal purposes, I feel like it's medicine for my soul. I feel like I get healing when I go spend the time out in scenes like this. So to me, it's almost a spiritual thing. All right. Let's see what else we have.
We're gonna talk about this creek over here.
You want to hear about that one? Well, I was supposed to tell you about that earlier because this is not Glacier National Park. This is, we go to Salina, then we go to Montana, and this is the Tetons, just south of Yellowstone. Now, when you're going out on the Highway 90, you're driving along, and you're driving this way, and there's this sign that says Yellowstone, 54 miles. And my car, kind of like my dad, would say, where do you suppose that goes? What can we see down there? So on my way out, I often end up in Yellowstone, or just below that, the Tetons. This is Lake Taggart. Does anybody know Kurt Schritz? He owns the Napa stores. His wife, Paula, was with me. I always take somebody with me now, so we got a partner in crime. And she and I went there and hiked back to Taggart Lake. It was about 3 miles, something like that. And got to see the reflection. Isn't that pretty, the Tetons?
Yeah.
And the Tetons are different from most mountains, different from any other mountains I've ever seen. When you see the Tetons, or the Rockies, there's foothills, then there's some smaller mountains where it looks like it's been pushed up, and then the bigger ones grow out of it. Not the Tetons. The ground is flat, and then it goes straight up. Because it's a tectonic plate. That sits on a seismic fissure, and the ground just stayed still, and the mountains got pushed up out of the ground. So that it's plains, there's buffalo, and cows and everything, and then boom, up goes the mountains. Just like that. So the Tetons are pretty special. They call Montana Big Sky Country. I'm saying Wyoming is close. It's got some nice blue sky. So,
At night you can see stars forever.
yes. Oh, and that's what I do. I took 1 year, we took my son Lucas and his friend Jeremy, and we went out and we were in the Tetons. We were in Jackson Hole at a campground. And I got up in the middle of the night, of course, to go to the bathroom, but I saw an amazing sight. It was dark, but it was light. It was like a twilight. And all the trees in the campground were in bloom, white bloom, so they like glowed in the night. And when you looked up, was a myriad of stars, more than we ever see here. And you couldn't do anything but understand the word awesome. Because all you could do was go, oh. I went in, there were 13-year-old boys, and I woke them up and I drug their behinds outside and said, you gotta see this. And so the trees looked like lanterns.
Yeah.
They did.
The biggest thing I noticed, when it's dark up there, it's really dark.
It's really dark. It's really dark. When I travel at night, I will pull off the side of the road in the mountains, turn off all the lights, and just watch the night explode in front of you. But the other thing that happens while you're sitting there watching the stars is you hear the forest, because guess what? It's alive. And it's full of all kinds of critters. And they live there, and I'm the visitor. Want to hear a funny story?
Yeah.
Okay. So, one time I was at the North Fork, and I was headed up the pole bridge. I hadn't seen a car for 5 miles. So I pulled in this little pull-off place, because there was no, I had to go to the bathroom. I had to go to the bathroom. So there was no bathroom facilities. I'm in the middle of nowhere. So I pull up kind of along the edge, and I get out of the car, and I had not learned yet how do you go to the bathroom in Montana, but I will share that later. So I got out and did an Ohio side of the road. Get out, drop the drawers, go down. Well, my pants dropped around my ankles. And I'm doing my business, and I know there's somebody watching me. I know it. I'm looking up the road and down the road. There's no car. There's nobody there. But you know that feeling when you know you're being watched? Then I heard a rustle. I looked up, and there was the biggest buck. He had antlers. They'd have put him on a mantle at Cabela's. He was so big. And he was watching me with interest. Now this is a male. I'm a female going to the bathroom, and there's scent in the air. So what did I do? I quick grabbed my pants, right? And I moved. Right flat down on the ground. And I'm scrambling, and he's watching me, and watching me, and I think, oh my gosh, I'm going to die here. He's going to rush me and kill me, and I got my pants down. Trying to pull him up, and I finally struggled my way in the car and closed the door, and he looked at me like I was crazy. He turned around and meandered and walked away. Now I had to get back out because I had to pull my britches up, you know. So that was one time, and no sooner had I gotten my pants up and in that car, and a Ranger went by. It's the only car I saw the whole time. I know. So anyways, I had some adventures and I had some misadventures. Since we're talking about using the bathroom, I worked with seasonal help in Montana. I worked with people who only held their job while the tourist season was going on. Then they would move south to Yellowstone or to the Grand Canyon or down to further into Arizona, and they would move with the seasons, and they were seasonal workers. They were also, some of them, young, and they also, let me see if you can understand this. They considered themselves to be chemists. And they thought they knew a lot about plants, how to grow it, and how to process it, and how to smoke it. So many of these workers, they smoked marijuana walking down the street. If they got in my car, they would pull out a joint and start smoking. Well, that did not fly with me. I have a teaching degree. I'm not going to lose it because you're smoking dope. So, anyways, my friends were young. And they would go hiking with me in the mountain. We would go together. So I really got, at 55, I drugs my whole career. But boy, did I learn about drugs and mushrooms and marijuana, and pills. Yeah, I learned all about it. Yeah. So I came home and shared that with some of my girlfriends. They didn't buy into it. Betty Kluber said, "I can't believe you did that." She's my good friend. And I went, oh. And I realized there's some stories I couldn't share, but one of them, we got up in the mountains way up, and he said, "Well, I'm up here, you can't do anything about it." And he pulls out a big, it was a cylinder. Now we know what they are. They're like vaping, but this was pre-vaping. Had it filled with marijuana, and he got out and started smoking it. I said, out the door, you hand it over, we put it in the trunk, or you're gonna walk back. Because if you're using dope or drugs in a national park, it's a federal crime. Speaking of that, I like to protect myself. So when I travel, I left it in my car, I carry bear spray. It looks like a fire extinguisher. It's about this big. It sprays 30 feet. Last time I was there, I had it out twice at a bear. Until I handed it to my son and ran. Because I thought, I'm 65, 66, and you're 40 years old. You know what? I can go and you can fight the bear. But anyways, and I carry bear spray. I also carry what I call man spray. Because I'm a woman traveling alone, right? So it's pepper spray. And I buy one every year. It's a little silver cylinder like this. And then I've got my bear spray and I've got my man spray. Darn, never did get to use that man
I was
spray.
gonna say, I wonder about that.
I was hoping, but it didn't happen. So anyway, I always do a trip within a trip. When I'm out there, I always travel for a mini trip into Canada. See some awesome things. Calgary, Banff Springs, just beautiful stuff, which next time I come, I can share some of those pictures. But when I cross into the Canadian border, do you know what they do? They take my man spray every single time.
You don't hide it.
Well, if you're hiding it, then you get arrested when they find it. Yeah.
You
She said,
didn't
no
hide it
way.
well enough.
I didn't hide. I know my luck. I'm not going to risk
I
it.
know.
You know what they did not take? My bear spray. The man spray is considered a weapon, and the bear spray is considered protection. And if I went back in the same entrance point that I left, I would get it back. But I always went out another one. I lost my man spray every single time. But I still have my bear spray. Okay, one more little story and then I'll show you a couple more pictures. When you get tired, you just let me know. Well, I was telling you I work with the young people. And so I was telling them the story about this big buck that was watching me go to the bathroom. And they were laughing at me and said, "What is wrong with you? Don't you know how to go to the bathroom in Montana?" Well, I've been around a while. I know how to do this, right? No, I didn't. They taught me how to go to the bathroom. I can do it in less than 10 seconds, and nobody even knows I did it. You open up the car door to the facing traffic. You got your britches ready and your paper towel with your plastic bag. You slide your britches down, and can I borrow this? Can I borrow this? You step outside and you put the back hip bones right on the edge of your step up in the car. Get these so you don't get them wet. You use the bathroom, and you're down and up, pants zipped, and in the car in 10 seconds. And nobody can see you because the car door is there. So that's one of the more valuable things that I've ever learned from Montana. Okay. Would you like to see some critters?
Yeah.
Would you see some critters? Okay, how many of you have seen a bear in the wild?
I never did.
Anybody seen a bear in the wild? Have you? Where? Do you know? Do you remember?
A whole bunch of them in Michigan.
Oh yeah, black bears?
Up in UP.
Black bears?
Yeah.
They don't have grizzlies there, do they? Or do they?
No. I never seen them.
Were you afraid?
I was in a truck.
Oh, good, yeah. We call that car hiking.
I seen all 10 of them in one day.
No, that's amazing. That's amazing. By the way, this is what I look like when I'm hiking. This shirt has some real memories. I was going back and forth to work to my cabin and back, and for like a day, this shirt was laying in the middle of the highway. Yeah, and it was flat and it'd been run over. There's some buttons broken, and I finally thought, that's a shame for that shirt to lay in the highway and get thrown away. So one day when there wasn't anybody coming, I stopped in the middle of a 4-lane highway. That was 3 and 4. Reached down, picked it up, threw it in the back, washed it, I don't know how many times, and it's become my Montana shirt. I think it's a 3X, I don't know. And so this is what I wear. I've got my Keens, my hiking boots, and I have other ones that are sandals that I can trudge through the water with, which I end up in the water more than one time. Yep. So let's look at some critters. Should I show you my favorite one first?
Yeah,
All right.
I guess so.
All right. Now, my brother moved to Spokane, Washington, and he was very lonely because his family was still in Oregon. He took a job there, and they would come out and see him. But he said, "I wish you guys would come see me." So I did. You don't ask me to come unless you expect me to come. So I took off and flew out to Spokane, Washington, and we got in the car and did a mini vacation inside of a vacation and went to Olympic National Park in Washington. And when we got there, we were hiking, and we knew there was a stream upriver because we had a map, and we started heading towards this stream. And guys, this is what we saw when we got there. This is a bobcat,
Oh, bobcat, what's good?
and he was fishing for salmon, and those salmon are over 3 feet long.
Oh, man.
Sometimes there would be 5 salmon, often 3, in the air at one time, swimming upstream to spawn. I had never seen it before. Isn't that amazing? And we watched and watched and watched, and he hunted, I mean, he fished and fished and fished for the longest time, and when we finally thought he had one, now his claws and his teeth are in this salmon.
Is that it right there?
Yeah, can you see?
Right there,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm wondering if that.
But he didn't catch it.
Oh,
And about
okay.
3 minutes later, he was so frustrated, and he was so frustrated that he wasn't catching anything, he was becoming risky, risk-taking, and into the drink, as my father would say, into the drink he went, right into this fast-running stream in this river, got wet, went downstream about 15, 20 yards, made his way up the rocks, and he looked like a drowned rat. And he slinked off like he was embarrassed. And I have pictures of that. It really, he looked, you ever see a cat? You ever see a cat when it's wet? That's just what he looked like. Yeah. Now, bobcats are not something you want to mess with. I'm more afraid of cats than I am of bears, because cats get up in the tree. They have mountain lions and bobcats and different kinds. And the, I held that wrong, guys. It's supposed to be like this. That makes sense? That make better sense? Sorry. But those were mossy covered rocks, really slippery, really slippery. So, poor guy, he never did catch his dinner. I imagine he went home to his wife to feed the kids, and she was not happy with him. All right. So, one day I was up at Logan Pass, which is halfway through the park, and I went to hike up to a place called Saya Pass. And the rams, these are actually sheep. These are bighorn sheep. And we sat, and what happened was I met a photographer. And his name is Lawrence St. Lawrence, and he's from Michigan. He's got a studio. He teaches at one of the Michigan universities. And I spent 5 hours on the mountain with him, photographing these sheep, bighorn sheep. Now, the first picture, and there were 7 of them. This is just 2 of them, and they were called bachelors because they hadn't found a mate yet. So they were like boys in high school, butting heads, screwing around, chasing each other. And it was so much fun because this photographer taught me how to photograph them. You sit down and you become part of nature. And like I said, we were up there 5 hours. 5 hours on the mountain. And you know what? They were not afraid of us. They would get within 10 or 15 feet. Because we just sat still. Except to move to get the camera, and then you did it really slow. So that's the first one.
What are those animals?
Those are bighorn sheep.
Sheep?
Bighorn sheep. They're solid. And they're all males. Then they started putting their heads together and kind of butting each other's heads.
I saw
Is that a
goats
sheep?
do that.
You saw goats do that. These are bigger than goats.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, geez, they're big. They're just solid like a rock. And these guys were playing. They were actually like boys on a playground.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of boys on the playground, a little while later, these 2 started getting serious about it. And there were 5 of them over here. They were like doing their own thing. And they started in getting real serious. Getting real serious about figuring out who was boss.
Uh-oh.
And this is what they started doing.
Well, actually.
And sometimes both their forepaws would be off the ground and their back feet, and they would butt heads, and it would ring through the valley. You could hear it just echo off the sides of the mountain, because it was like bang, bang, and they'd back up and they'd do it again. And as soon as the first headbutt happened and that sound of the 2 of them banging heads, those other 5 came running like little boys who were watching a fight on the playground. And if you've ever seen that, little boys on a playground, they did, and they just gathered around and watched. Isn't that something?
Yeah.
But, oh, to hear that sound, it was like, oh my gosh, I thought this only happened in National Geographic. But, all right, so that is the sheep. Now, let's see if I can find the one that Glacier is most known for. Y'all still want to see these?
Yeah.
Still? Okay.
That's their last name.
All right, here's one I like. Now I got real up close and personal with this guy. Up there, their symbol for Glacier National Park is the mountain goat.
I have some. Yeah.
Isn't he nice looking? That's the big old billy goat. We'll be hiking along the trail. You have to hike up 2 miles or 3 miles and then down 1 mile to get to this lake, hidden lake. And these guys like to hang out there. And we had hiked, and it's a 6 mile, about a 5.7 miles round trip. And we were down on the beach. We had hiked down, which was tough. Got down there and laid down on the beach. It's a rocky beach to take a little nap. We'd eaten our lunch on the rocks. And we laid down to take a nap, and I was laying down, eyes closed, and I heard the rocks rattling. And I looked up, and this guy was just walking from here to the fireplace, away from me, across the stream. He looked at me. He thought I could take her. And I thought, you can take me? I know you would. So I just laid still. I happened to have my camera right beside me and was able to snap a shot. But he's very close. He is really close. And there are herds of the goats all over the mountain. Oh, and I was telling you, you're walking on the path, and if they're coming and they decide they want to be on the path, they just keep coming right at you. And you better get out of their way, because they're going to come right, and it'll be mama, or daddy is always first, and then mama, and then this year's babies. And we watched a set of twins for a couple of years as they grew up. And then the yearlings, that are following beside them. So that's the symbol of Glacier National Park. All right, let me see what else we have here. I'm going to share a little experience that I got to have up there. That's pretty special for me. And that is, each year I go up, I try to go up in a helicopter and take pictures. So they're never National Geographic quality, but they're what they're okay for me. As my printer who does my printing says, oh, they're average at best, Deb. Okay, but they're not at home sitting there doing nothing. They're going to be average, and I'm going to show them to you. So, that one I'll tell you about in a minute. So these are aerial views. This is from a helicopter. You see the lake? Look how far the landscape and the mountains go on and on and on. And that was earlier in the year because there's lots of snow. And there are glaciers, I forget, are there 5 or 7 or 11? I forget how many glaciers are still there. And they predicted that they would all be gone by 2020. God had other plans. They're still there. In fact, some of the glaciers are growing. So much for global warming. So some of the glaciers are actually growing. So that's one day. And each day you go up, the lighting is different. And here's another one. Now what I like about this one is these are called cascading lakes. These are alpine lakes. I've seen 5 of them where there's a lake, the top of the mountain, it cascades down in a waterfall into another lake and cascades again and cascades again. Isn't that something? We don't see that in Salina, do we? We do have the toilet bowl out at the lake.
I was going to say, food in there.
So that's something, and let's see, what else do I have here? I think we're getting to the end, guys. Oh no, I know what you want to see. Okay, it doesn't, the critters are always the favorite. So here is a series. This guy is one of the favorites.
Oh, he's cute.
That is a mountain ground squirrel. And in one of their pictures, you can see me in his eye, the reflection. But as big and as ferocious as the bears are, and I'll show you a couple in a minute, this is one that people really enjoy. And what makes me marvel, here he is. He was just eating. He'd go from one flower to the next, one flower to the next, munch away.
I can't
And,
sit down.
and on this one, it was like he was saying to me, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing here? This is my mountain. These are my flowers. He's just looking right at me and he's chewing, but it looks like he's talking when he was chewing. And he was from me to you away. He was that close. And then this one happens to be my favorite because I look at and marvel at his little paws. Can you see the claws on him and the pads on his hand? Isn't that amazing? And he used them just like hands. He just reached out, pulled in those flowers. Isn't that something, his little hand? Yeah, those great big long nails. And they used those to climb around on the rocks. And I don't know, not this one, but one of them, you can actually see my reflection in his eye, the silhouette of me. I was that close. But this one, like I say, for me, most people like that one, but I like this one because I just think his paws are just amazing. See these claws? Look at those.
Oh, man.
Yeah, they're pretty big, aren't they?
Oh, like cactus.
Sure, give
Can
it
you
a
see
good.
them?
They look like cactus.
Yeah. Yeah, they do. All right, well, we wouldn't be. Does anybody in here know June Haney?
June Haney.
June Haney.
June Haney?
June Haney is a friend of mine. I think she's 88, 89, whatever.
Well,
And we had a show, and I had all the critters out. Speaking of that, we're missing one. but I know you wanna see. So I had pulled all the critters out, and I asked her which was her favorite critter. And guess what she said?
Bear.
This fly fisherman. And if you've never seen fly fishing, it is amazing.
Pretty good looking legs, isn't
Yeah.
See, what kind of fishing?
Fly fishing.
Fly fishing.
Oh, fly
It's like a dance.
Uh,
It's like a dance.
Yeah,
It's
you
just
can almost
beautiful. Yeah.
And then the mountains in the background.
And this is at Hidden Lake. So he had to hike over 3 miles up and down a mountain to get down there to catch trout.
yeah.
Now we fished down there, we've caught trout, taken them home and put them up in my cast iron skillet. And you know what? There is no better eating than that. All right, I think I have 2 more I want to show you. If I didn't bring it, I'll be sad. It means I have to bring it next time. There it is.
You have these up in your house and all that?
I have, yes, I have a wall of some.
Oh,
This one's on my wall. This is a canvas in my house. All right. So I took my son, Paul, and his daughter, Demetra, my granddaughter, and I took them out west. And we hiked Avalanche Creek. And we were hiking to Avalanche Lake. So it's a 3.7-mile hike. And we were partway down the trail when I saw a movement. I've learned to watch the mountain. And I saw a movement in the mountain, a pie. And so we stopped where we were and we watched it. And pretty soon you could see the mama bear. And she was grunting. And because it was across the valley over this river, you could hear her grunt. They snort. They snort like a pig. Yeah. And she was yelling at the cubs. Well, we couldn't see the cubs. We could just see the grass moving. So pretty soon down the mountain they came and got close to the river, and we could see that it was a mama bear and 2 cubs. Oh my gosh, we were so excited. We clambered out onto the rocks near an outcropping that was above, safe distance away. Got my long lens out and started taking pictures, and didn't she pose for us? She came across that river, all 3 of them like that, and I got this shot. Now, I gotta tell you, I was excited. And there was about 15 of us by then, because when somebody stops, everybody wants to know why, and they end up stopping and taking pictures. So we're taking pictures of these bears. They go across the river. We're so excited. We've seen them. We're done. We get back on the trail. Now, I gotta tell you guys, the river is there. The bears came from there, and they're going that way, and the trail goes here. None of us stopped to think that the bears were going where they wanted to go, which was straight across the trail in front of us. So we're walking along chattering, so excited, and guess what? Right there in front of us is Mama Bear and 2 cubs. Now, I'm going to tell you, what you don't want to do is get in between or upset Mama if she's got 2 cubs, because that is not safe. And that's when I had my bear spray out of the holster, the thing off, and pointed at the bear. And that's when I handed it to my son, because see, the rule is, you don't have to be the fastest, you just don't want to be the slowest. Okay, I have one more I'm going to show you. You like the critters? Like this?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's see if I can find the one I want to show you. Where is it? All right. I was in the helicopter, and it was my first year out there. And going through the cancer treatment had been very, very rough. I had almost died twice. I'd gone septic. They put me on the dying floor, assured me I was not there because they thought I was going to die. It was not very convincing. But seminary, I had tremendous support. Louise, one of them. So I was totally blessed, but it was scary. It was scary and it was rough. And even though everybody's there to support you, you have to go through it alone. It's only you. So I was in a helicopter and I got this picture of this chimney rock. And I don't know about you, but that looks like a man standing on the edge of a precipice. Now we're high up in a helicopter looking down on the mountain. Doesn't that look like a man standing alone? And I thought at first, oh, that's how I felt sometimes going through cancer. Wondering if I was going to die or live, or if it was going to come back. It's a lonely feeling, even though I had the best support in the world. And then God spoke to my heart, and he said, oh, that's not alone. His feet are on solid bedrock, and I am his foundation, just like you. And so on solid ground, this figure stands, way up high on the mountain. And that's how I feel my life has been, that I've gotten all kinds of support. So, okay, that's today's adventure.
That was wonderful.
Oh,